There are places that are more than just buildings. They are organisms. They have a pulse, a memory, and a hidden, silent life that hums just beneath the surface of our awareness. St. Jeremiah's Medical Center was one of those places. It wasn't just a hospital. It was a city unto itself, a sprawling labyrinth of sterile new wings grafted onto decaying old ones, of glass and steel covering a heart of crumbling brick and forgotten history. And I, like a fool, took a job watching over its sleeping body during the dead of night. My name is Marco, and I was hired to be a security guard. What I actually became was a witness to the hospital's dark, beating heart. I wasn't new to the night shift. I'd spent 12 years as a cop, and the darkness was a familiar, if not always friendly, companion. But a shattered femur from a chase gone wrong had put an end to that career, leaving me with a permanent limp and a deep-seated weariness. Security at St. Jeremiah's seemed like the perfect epilogue. Quiet, predictable, and slow. All I had to do was walk the halls, check the doors, and watch the endless bank of CCTV monitors, a silent shepherd for a flock of doctors, nurses, and sleeping patients. The first few weeks were exactly that. I learned the hospital's geography, the sterile scent of the surgical ward, the hushed reverence of the ICU, the almost cheerful quiet of the maternity wing. But I also learned about the other parts of St. Jeremiah's, the parts they didn't show you on the orientation tour, the old condemned wings that were locked and chained, the winding service tunnels that webbed beneath the foundation, and the sub-basement levels the staff called the catacombs, a place no one went. My partner on the shift was a man named Frank, a veteran guard on the brink of retirement. Frank was a man of few words, with eyes that had seen too many long nights. He taught me the rounds, the protocols, the dead zones in the camera coverage. But he also taught me the unwritten rules. "See this?" he asked one night, pointing to a small, untouched tray of food, a carton of milk, a sandwich, an apple, left by a service elevator in a deserted hallway. "You see this? You didn't see it. You walk on." "Who's it for?" I asked. Frank just shrugged, his eyes scanning the empty corridor. "The hospital has its own ecosystem, kid. Some things you just don't poke."
It was the first of many strange rituals I began to notice. A single clean blanket folded neatly on a bench in a wing that had been closed since the 70s. Chalk drawings, a sun, a flower, a simple stick figure appearing on the concrete floors of the service tunnels, only to be gone the next day. A security door to the old archives found slightly ajar, with no sign of forced entry. Every time I mentioned it to Frank, he'd give me the same tired look and the same cryptic advice. "Let it be, Marco. Not our business, not our problem." But it was my business. My cop instincts, rusty as they were, wouldn't let it go. It felt like a conspiracy of silence, a collective agreement among the night staff to ignore the inexplicable. The nurses would avoid eye contact if I asked about a strange noise. The janitors would quickly scrub away the chalk drawings, their faces grim and set. They were all in on it. They were all afraid of something, and their fear was far more unsettling than any ghost story.
My first real glimpse of it came about a month into the job. I was in the main security office, a small windowless room filled with the low hum of electronics. My eyes were scanning the wall of monitors, a hypnotic grid of silent grayscale hallways. My gaze drifted to camera 37B, which covered the entrance to the old condemned North Wing. And I saw it, a flicker of movement. I rewound the footage. There, for no more than 4 or 5 frames, a small figure darted from the shadow of one pillar to another. It was fast, impossibly fast, and small, like a child. My heart hammered in my chest. I called Frank over. He stared at the screen for a long moment, his face unreadable. Probably a trick of the light, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Faulty camera?
I didn't believe him. Against his advice, I grabbed my heavy-duty flashlight and went to investigate. The north wing was sealed with a heavy chain and a padlock, but the door was a fraction of an inch ajar, just as I'd seen it before. The air that hit me as I slipped inside was thick and stale, the smell of ancient dust and decay. I swept my flashlight beam across the cavernous dark space. I saw rows of old beds with rotting mattresses, overturned gurneys, and medical equipment that looked like medieval torture devices. I called out, but only my own voice echoed back at me. There was no one there. But as I turned to leave, my light caught something on the floor, tucked beside the leg of an old wheelchair. It was a doll, handmade from scraps of cloth and surgical gauze, with mismatched buttons for eyes. It was crude, childish, and in that dead, silent place, it was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen.
That doll became my obsession. I started digging, quietly. I spent my days off in the city archives, pulling up the hospital's old blueprints and records. St. Jeremiah's was built on the grounds of a 19th century asylum. The catacombs weren't just service tunnels. They were the original foundation of the old asylum, a maze of brick and stone that no modern map accurately depicted. The encounters grew more frequent, more personal. I'd hear humming in the air vents above my head in the security office. Not a lullaby like in some ghost story, just a tuneless, absent-minded hum. I found small nests in hidden alcoves and forgotten closets, piles of stolen blankets, pillows, and empty food wrappers. And the drawings. They started appearing more often, but they were changing. They weren't just flowers and suns anymore. One night I found one sketched in chalk on the back of a storage room door. It was a bird with a broken wing. The detail was unsettling, anatomically precise.
I started talking to the night staff again, but this time I was more direct. I cornered a young nurse named Chloe in the break room. I showed her a picture of the doll I'd found. Her face went pale. "It's Lily," she whispered, her eyes darting towards the door as if someone might overhear. "Who's Lily?" I pressed. I can't. They say we shouldn't talk about her. It's for our own good." She looked at me, her eyes wide with a genuine, desperate fear. "Just leave it alone, please. Leave her food if you feel you have to, but don't look for her. Never look for her. Lily." The name hung in the air. She wasn't a ghost. She was a person, a girl who lived in the forgotten corners of this hospital, a secret known by all and acknowledged by none. The staff wasn't protecting a secret. They were appeasing a presence. I couldn't let it go. One night, I decided I would break their unspoken rule. I would find her. I checked the schedule. Frank was starting his long patrol of the external wings, a 2-hour round that would take him to the furthest corners of the hospital campus. It was the perfect opportunity. I would be completely alone in the central building, with no one to question where I was going. Armed with the old blueprints and a powerful flashlight, I headed for the one place I knew she had to be: the catacombs. The entrance was behind a rusted boiler in the lowest level of the sub-basement. The air grew cold and damp as I descended the iron staircase, the smell of wet earth and ozone filling my lungs. This was another world. The sleek, sterile hospital above seemed a universe away. Down here, it was all dripping pipes, crumbling brick, and a darkness so absolute it felt solid. My flashlight beam cut a nervous path through the gloom, revealing tunnels that branched off in every direction. I followed the signs. Scraps of cloth tied to pipes, faint, scuffed footprints in the decades of dust, and more drawings, this time scratched into the brick with what looked like a sharp piece of rock. They were getting more complex. A heart with a leaking valve, lungs clouded with shadow. They were drawings of sickness, of anatomy. They were the drawings of someone who had spent a lifetime watching people die. After what felt like hours of walking, I found it, her lair. It was a larger chamber, a forgotten cistern from the old asylum, and it was filled with a life's work. Every inch of the curved brick walls was covered in drawings, hundreds of them. It was a gallery of suffering. I saw patients I recognized from the ICU, their faces etched with pain. I saw doctors and nurses, their expressions a mixture of exhaustion and grief. It was a silent, sprawling chronicle of the life of the hospital. And then I saw her. She was sitting in the corner, almost hidden behind an old rusted water pump. She was just a girl, maybe 10 or 11 years old, with pale skin, huge dark eyes, and long, matted hair. She wore a tattered, oversized janitor's shirt as a dress. She wasn't a monster. She wasn't a ghost. She was just a child. She watched me, her head tilted with an unnerving, placid curiosity. She didn't seem scared. She didn't seem anything. "Lily?" I said, my voice hoarse. She didn't answer. She just kept watching me, her eyes reflecting my flashlight beam. I took a step closer, my eyes scanning the drawings on the wall behind her. They weren't just random moments. They were specific. A car crash victim being brought into the ER, a woman weeping in the chapel, an old man taking his last rattling breath. Then my light fell on a drawing that made the air freeze in my lungs. It was a man in a police uniform, lying on a street, his leg twisted at an unnatural angle. Doctors were leaning over him, their faces masks of panic. It was me. It was the night my career ended, the night I was shot. The detail was perfect, from the make of the car in the background to the specific pattern of blood on the asphalt. But it was impossible. No one here knew those details. I'd never told anyone. It was a memory that belonged only to me. My mind reeled, trying to find a logical foothold. How could she know? How could she possibly know that? My eyes darted around the gallery of horrors, and then I saw another drawing, newer than the others, scratched near the entrance of the chamber. It was of a man, an older man, in a security guard's uniform. He was in the security office, clutching his chest, his face contorted in pain. It was Frank. As if on cue, my radio crackled to life, the sound deafening in the silence of the catacombs. It was Chloe, the young nurse. Her voice was frantic, breathless. "Marco, are you there? It's Frank. He just collapsed. He must have just gotten back from his rounds. He's having a massive heart attack. We're working on him now in the security office." I stared at the drawing, then back at the girl, Lily, who hadn't moved an inch. She was still just watching me with those empty, ancient eyes. And in that moment, the horrifying, impossible truth fell into place. She wasn't a squatter. She wasn't a ghost. She wasn't a runaway. She was something else. She didn't cause these things to happen. She didn't predict them. She was a receiver, a living record, an antenna for every moment of pain, fear, and death that occurred within the walls of St. Jeremiah's. She was the hospital's memory, made flesh. The staff didn't leave her food as an offering to appease a demon. They left it as a caretaker feeds a living archive, a primal, superstitious act to maintain a fragile peace with the house of horrors they worked in. The true horror wasn't the girl. The horror was her existence. to be a silent, eternal witness to an endless, relentless parade of human suffering. To see it all, past, present, and what was yet to come, and to be able to do nothing but draw it on a wall in the dark. I stumbled backwards, out of the chamber, my mind a screaming chaos. I never looked back. I ran through the tunnels, not caring where I was going, just needing to get away from her, from that gallery, from that terrible, silent knowledge. I am no longer a security guard. I left that night and never returned. But I am not free. I know that somewhere in the cold, dark heart of that hospital, there is a wall. And on that wall, Lily has already drawn a picture of me. She has drawn the last room I will ever be in, the last face I will ever see, the last breath I will ever take. She has already witnessed the end of my story. And the most terrifying part is this. I know that when that day comes, in that final moment, I won't be alone. She will be there as she is for everyone. Watching, remembering, drawing.
If you enjoyed this creepy story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more chilling tales every week. Stay spooky.